So thanks everyone for joining us today. Really excited to have this webinar and announce this new product. So what we're here to talk about today is SmartWatch. And SmartWatch is a product that we've designed in-house, and we've been at work for quite a while on this, especially the data portal side of things. So you might be familiar with Stinson for our distribution, integration, kind of turnkey solutions, but only a few products that we've developed ourselves, but you're going to start to see more and more of those. And this is kind of the first of many. And really excited about this one, really strong feedback we've gotten so far. So let's get into it. So my name is Michael McGuire. I'm the president of Stinson ITS. So we're a Canadian-based ITS provider. I'll show on the next slide kind of what we get into, but today we're talking about SmartWatch. Again, an in-house creative solution. We're going to talk about what is it, what does it do, where this idea came from, how does it work, and then kind of the most interesting part is the cloud data portal that accompanies the solution and really where the magic happens. So we're going to spend quite a bit of time in the second half of the webinar to kind of showcase the different feature sets that are available in that portal. And then of course, we'll have questions at the end. So on the right-hand side in your sidebar, the GoToWebinar menu, there's a questions tab. So in there, feel free throughout the presentation to throw questions. Oh, seems like your internet might be messing up. Hopefully you guys can hear me. So as I said, just shoot questions into the questions menu or menu bar at the side as they come up. Right before we get to the dashboard portion of the webinar, we are going to have a poll question. We're going to kind of ask you a multiple choice question, and then the first person to answer correctly will get a little gift bag. So the answers to the questions will go into that question tab as well. So just keep in mind, everything goes in the question tab. And let's jump into it. So a bit about Stinson ITS before we get too far. If you're not aware, Stinson ITS and our parent company Stinson, along with a few other companies, were acquired last February by an organization called Bermudan Global. And it's a group of companies, about 32 different companies across 12 countries, originally based mostly in Northern Europe. And they're very heavily focused on infrastructure safety and temporary traffic management. So we're now part of Bermudan Canada, along with our former parent company Stinson. And Bermudan Services is another member of that group, which used to be Direct Traffic, as well as some other companies like BGC Services and Dynamic Traffic Services. That is now our Temporary Traffic Management Services wing. And then more recently, OBW was also acquired, which is a barrier wall and rental equipment company. So Stinson ITS, as I said, we're a product distributor, but we try to be kind of a design house, start to finish, turnkey solution. So we supply products, but we often build kind of accompanying solutions to kind of enhance those or turn them into turnkey solutions. So building solar systems, building AC power, communication systems, software solutions, and bundling those together to give you a turnkey offering. And we often start very early in the process with clients, designing systems, getting challenges, trying to come up with interesting solutions to problems that cities have. So, you know, from early design to inception, building the solution, selling you the solution, to implementation, project management, maintenance, we try to offer a well-rounded offering from start to finish. And now we probably have to add another wing to this of product development, because that's becoming a bigger and bigger priority for us. This is our little fancy office. This is me in this little room right here. But yeah, that's Stinson. So as I said, we're here to talk about SmartWatch. And what is SmartWatch? SmartWatch is a tool that can be added on to an RFB pedestrian crossing. So if you're familiar with the RFB standard of Book 15, those are starting to be extremely prominent across the country, and especially in Ontario. And we are a distributor of TAPCO's RFBs. So we've been selling RFBs for 7 years now. We've got hundreds of them out there. And so that's kind of how we were inspired to think of this technology as a retrofit to our solution TAPCO, but also all vendors out there. So SmartWatch is an agnostic add-on tool that enables data collection as well as safety enhancement of existing and new RFBs. And I put the Vision Zero logo here because it seems in the industry, Vision Zero is thought of as non-technological, like focused on pavement markings or delineated bike lanes and things like that. And while there's some limited technology options for Vision Zero. There's more and more coming out, and part of the reason why we started developing this solution is because it is a safety-focused one. And so just to expand your horizons and understand that Vision Zero can be enhanced by technology as well, not just more traditional methods. So this is just a picture of one of our demo sites where we've got a camera and then the power and communications box. And I'll get into what all that means in a minute. But I wanted to walk through where this idea came from. So as I said, we've been distributing and selling RFP solutions for a long time. So we're very tightly knit with traffic departments and active transportation departments across the country. And we're seeing a lot of investment in active transportation, big budgets, lots of PXOs going out. But what we find is that they're often put out there because they have budget. They think they, are putting them where people want them, but they don't really know if they're being used or how much are they being used, or are there safety concerns? And especially when it comes to like bike facilities adjacent to the crossings, are people pushing the button? The short answer is no when it comes to bikes, but I was actually kind of surprised how few walking pedestrians actually push the button as well. So we're trying to answer these questions with a technology solution, and that's what SmartWatch kind of came from, and that's what it is. So essentially, it's got three major components. So it's got an off-the-shelf camera. In this case, we started with Bosch. We've been working with all sorts of camera vendors across the years, tons of experience with video analytics. And in my experience, Bosch is still the leader in onboard analytics. So we're using their technology, but there's a lot of new companies and existing kind of major firms like Axis and the Vigilon and whatnot that are, coming up in the world in onboard analytics. And so the intention with SmartWatch is that it's agnostic for the camera. We just happen to start with Bosch because they seem to be the best right now. But we start with the camera, and then what we add to it is a power and communications box, either AC powered or solar powered, and then a cloud portal, and that is smartcitydata.ca. This is probably the most exciting part of this whole solution. Coming together is all great, but this is a portal that we've never created our own software like this before. So we've been working on this portal for about the past 18 months, and it actually does a lot more than what we're narrowing in here on for this application, but this is the first product or solution that we've launched that utilizes that portal. So really excited to show that to you. And so of these three components, we make the power comms box and the cloud portal. And so again, restating somewhat the same thing, you have hardware at the side of the road, a box plus the camera. Then through LTE, we're sending data up to the cloud, and we're hosted on AWS Canada, so all the data stays in Canada. And then you access the portal through a web browser. Chrome is recommended, but everything's supported. And yeah, I'll keep going here. So I kind of mentioned it in passing, but in detail, specifically what it's doing is when we say data collection, we mean essentially a multimodal count station. So it's counting peds, bikes, cars, and trucks, including directionality, crossing on the crossing, as well as on the roadway that it's positioned on. So you got a full multimodal directional count station to understand utilization, time of day, day of week, factoring over years, how things change over time for utilization. So you have that aspect of it for data collection, but then you also have two safety elements. And the first is non-compliance detection. And what we define non-compliance as is somebody using the crosswalk still in the roadway and a vehicle crosses their path either behind them or in front of them. And if you're in Ontario, the law changed a few years ago where you have to wait till people cross entirely across the roadway before you're allowed to proceed. And so we did some testing with this. We weren't sure how frequently this was going to occur, but we were a little shocked that almost every day we have a few events of this non-compliance occurring. So interesting data and data that cities don't have. So when we shared this with our various partners that have allowed us to do some piloting of this technology, they were quite shocked as well to learn that non-compliance events happen and how frequently. So a tool to kind of look at the safety for that aspect, but then also a supplemental flash feature. So again, as I mentioned earlier, most bikes don't stop to push the button. So especially bikes, the system will use kind of the camera as a presence detector to say, if you're entering the crossing, automatically flash the lights. And We find not all pedestrians push it, and certainly most bikes don't push it. So just make sure that almost anytime anyone's in the crossing, the lights are flashing, and it's just going to increase safety across the board. So these are the 3 core features that the solution is delivering, and then the exciting part is kind of how that's viewed and analyzed in the portal. So this is a quick animation. The first time doing an animation, so it's kind of fun, but kind of shows you how the system works. So you just enter the crossing. Hopefully you push the button still. We're not looking to replace the button, but we are finding a lot of people don't, whether that's hesitancy post-COVID or whatnot. On a bike, I get it. You don't want to stop and get off, but yeah, the idea is whether you push it or not, it's going to flash when you enter the roadway. And then this is an example of non-compliance. So somebody's crossing and a car violates your crossing. And so we capture that event and save it as an event with a timestamp, which you can then review and analyze in the cloud. So looking at the different functionality, the first is a multimodal count station. And we've been quite surprised at how good the system is at accurately counting the different modes across the roadway. So this is a little clip here. You can see of it just tracking 5 people moving across the roadway as the analytics tries to track these objects. And we're seeing about 95% accuracy with pedestrians, 85 for bikes, 95 for cars, and 90 for trucks. Trucks is actually a little higher, but we get such low volume that I'm trying to be conservative in my accuracy estimate here. But as you can see, we're on a small 2-lane road, and we're still getting 30,000 vehicles a day. So this number did shock me, how many come through. And we've also thought about, often there's AEDT counts that use to determine, should you do a level C, a level B, or a level A crossing? And obviously those volumes change over time. So this could potentially be used to kind of watch as volumes evolve over time and maybe justify an upgrade to your system. The crossing we're at here is a level C crossing, for your information. But this screenshot here is just a clip out of our custom dashboard I created in our portal, and we'll show you this later, but just gives you an idea of some of the data that you can pull out from the system and the counts it's collecting. And then the second feature is non-compliance. And so again, like I said, it's the essential rule is a ped or a bike is in the crossing and a vehicle passes through. And so sometimes it's just an impatient driver, like these cases where they pass behind you before allowing you to complete your passage. But sometimes it can be very dangerous events where people are actually cut off as they're crossing, so in front of them, in the case of these 2 lower ones. And those are less frequent, but still quite often occur. And so the idea here is understand how frequently, or if at all, these events are happening at your crosswalks. And then once you learn about that, you can try to implement countermeasures and then see, what is the after effect of those implementations. So the idea is measure it, identify a problem, try to solve it, and then see if it works or not. And some of the insights we've gained from our demo sites is that almost all of these non-compliance events occur when there's no flashing. And so we just implemented auto flash maybe about a month ago or so. So I'd really like to do some research as we expand our number of sites to look at, what is the incidence of non-compliance before auto flash and after auto flash, because I suspect it will have a reasonable impact. And as I mentioned, a lot of people don't use the button. I did not realize it was so high. We see like 30 to 40% of pedestrians don't use the button. And unsurprisingly, 90% of cyclists don't use the button. And certainly in cases where there's, poor geometry or line of sight, I can see a lot of value in the solution to help keep cyclists safe. Because the most daunting non-compliance videos we see are when bikers enter the crosswalk. And then automatic flash, nothing too crazy, fairly straightforward. You enter the crossing, and once you do, the lights start flashing. It's a little bit difficult to see here. These LEDs are meant to be very directional, so they might be very faint, but they are flashing. And that's it. When you exit the crossing, time will run and the flashing will stop. So fairly straightforward, but a pretty powerful feature. We've had a lot of positive feedback about this. And again, not meant to replace the button, but has some nice guaranteed flash kind of functionality. Okay, and we're already to the poll. So this webinar we're noticing is going to be pretty short. A lot of time is going to be spent in the portal. But before we jump into that, we wanted to get through the poll question. So the poll today, I'm going to show you the question, and then I'm going to show you the multiple choice answer. So what components of the solution are made in-house by Stinson ITS? And again, put your answer in the question window, and then Samantha will find out who answered first, and we'll announce that in a moment. So A, all components, B, the camera in the portal, C, the power comm box in the portal, or D, the camera analytics and the power and comm box.
We do already have a correct answer. It was pretty immediate. So kudos to you for paying very good attention. The answer was C, power and comm box and cloud portal. The first person to answer was Bramont. So I will contact you afterwards by email to get your shipping address.
Awesome, thanks, Samantha. And so as I mentioned, the real magic happens with the dashboarding and analysis tools in our cloud portal. So we're going to take a pause here and just spend the last 10 minutes or so of the webinar going through the different functionality that's available in there. And and then we'll end off with the question period. So as I mentioned, the website is smartcitydata.ca, and this system is meant to be kind of a much bigger application that can do a lot of other stuff, but the focus here is on data more than anything. So you log in, you get a camera view. We just placed one of our demo units into the portal, so you're greeted with a map page. You can filter by device. We have integrated the Houston radar devices, the MyoVision devices, our Stinson ACE travel time sensor, and now Bosch sensors for this camping application. So we'll jump right into the dive into the data section, and this is a dashboarding tool. And so what you're greeted with here is your default dashboard. So this is one I created a couple weeks ago. Again, the idea here is you have a bunch of different tiles which you can move around, you can resize, you can place wherever you want, and you can customize the content in there. So you can see here a bunch of, you can see images, you can see titles, you can see KPI numbers, you can see line graphs, table charts. So you can kind of add these tiles and populate these different tiles with various data sets, and then save the workspace as your default, as well as just saving it for later recall. So this is one you can see here. This is our non-compliance events. So we have all of the events from the last couple of days. So you see we had one this morning at 11, we had one yesterday, and we had two on Monday, a bunch more on the weekend, obviously a lot more ped traffic there. But right now, all it is a timestamp. And you can kind of see how many have happened in the past 7 days, how many in the past 30 days. And we do local recording on the camera to an SD card. Right now, in order to kind of look at these events, we have to go onto the camera and pull 1-minute clips of those events. Now that can be disabled if you want, but I think it's a really powerful feature. Like having a line item here is all good and great, but really a picture or a video in this case says 1,000 words. So kind of one of the roadmap items that will be coming out soon is the ability to capture short little clips of each of these events. So you can kind of analyze just how serious of an event this is. And then again, if you see your crossings have a lot of these, perhaps you should implement some additional signage or additional, we've often enhanced our pedestrian crossings to add additional light bars up top or LED signage, etc. And so you might consider some of that if you notice that one of your sites has a compliance issue. So it just gives you an idea of what's possible looking at a 2-month trend, fairly stable volumes, peds, bikes, trucks and cars, etc. Looks like August was a bit higher, not surprising, but just easy way to visualize your data. And again, this is fully customizable. So this is just one I created. You could clear the screen. And if you didn't have a default dashboard, what you'd be greeted with is an empty dashboard like this. You have a tile here, and you can just start creating tiles and arranging them however you want, and then adding content to them. So it's meant to be extremely customizable and even we don't understand all the different use cases, what data different departments care about, but the idea is to give you full control. So in here, when you're adding data to a tile, you can add just data. This is the primary one. So you have bar graphs, line graphs, KPI numbers. You can do TMCs, or you do a table view, and various data sets. So you can do data graphing. You can do text. If you just want to label, you can put a map view in there. You can add a title to the chart. You can add a static image, or now we also support capturing live images either once or every hour of your camera deployment site. So if we start with data, we can choose, say Bosch in this case. I want to do a line graph, 15-minute interval, the last 7 days. At our demo site, we want to say only pedestrians. I'm going to call this peds. So this is the legend label. So I add that. Now I have this graph, and maybe I want to view it a couple different ways. Get a little bit bigger like this. And now I can add data sets to that. So if I want to add the same kind of thing, but I want to add, say, bikes this time. I can add bicycles to it, call it bikes, and now I have 2 data sets on the same chart. I can turn these data sets on and off as I want. And then if I want to add a title, I can add a title to it as well. Let's say bikes and peds, last 7. And then I can just keep adding different tiles and data sets to this, build a workspace, and then save that workspace for later use. There's a lot of little thoughtful tools in here. If I want to then have something similar but dedicated to vehicles, I can duplicate this tile and come down and edit the data set to say, okay, I don't want it to be called peds, I want it to be called light vehicles. And I'm going to focus in on the light vehicle classification. I'm going to change that. And then I can edit the second one. Instead of starting from scratch, you can save yourself a lot of editing. And I'm going to say, look at trucks as well. I'm going to call this trucks. And I have a graph that looks at light vehicles and at trucks. I'm going to change the title there too. Let's call it cars, trucks, last. And I have a basic dashboard that gives me some insight into, multimodal traffic as well as vehicular traffic at this site. And if I want to save it, so we can save 2 things. One, I can save the layout, which is where the tiles are, not the content, how big they are, and how they're positioned. If I have to come up with kind of a cool layout that took me a while to add and arrange, you can save that. We find this is not as useful. The more interesting part is saving a workspace. So that's all the tiles, how they're positioned, and all the data that's in them. So I can say sample dashboard, last 7 days. Now in this case, I normally have access to multiple clients, but you would typically have just one. But the important part is we thought about how you want to share data. So often you'll want to share dashboards you create with your colleagues within your organization. So you can save a workspace either personally, so only you can see it in the future, or you can save it publicly so that anybody else that's in your same organization can log in and access this workspace as well. So we've now saved that workspace. If I want to load it, I can load layouts. Let me show you what layouts look like. It's just a bunch of empty boxes, but it's arranged in a certain way that I can then populate it if I want to. Workspaces, very similar. So I have some personal ones that aren't available to everyone, and then I have a bunch of public ones. So I can come back here and I can see the one that I just saved, and I can load it again. So fairly straightforward, but really useful feature. And I've actually had a lot of fun the last couple of days playing around because we spent so much time developing the solution that we don't actually get in and start playing with different ideas around how the data can be manipulated. And I'm sure we haven't even scratched the surface of what's possible, but some ideas that we've seen, different data sets, ways to view it. That's one workspace looked at. One of the things we can do is we can do day of the week, time of day, historical averaging. So we can look at, what is the average weekend for the past 8 weeks and compare that with last weekend. Or what is the average So that's just for pets. So we can do, how does today compare with historical numbers? How does the average bike week compare to the average last weekend? And we can plot it on the chart as well. Like, what does a typical weekend versus weekday look like? And I can tell you right now, there's some sort of error I have in the way I configured this data, because that number should not be so far off. Last 30 days, average count. Not sure what happened there. That might be a bug we just found. There we go. Well, anyways, you get the idea. Custom dashboards. If I wanted to rearrange this to make it look a little different, I can change things around and delete my titles. I can rename them. If you want your logo, you can add it there, etc. Say this looks nicer to me, and then I can save that workspace for later use. And then to that same degree, you can also save the tile. Saving the tile means basically saving this tile and the reports and data sets that you've added to it. So for example, one of these other ones, it's no small task to then create one of these tiles and add 4 different data sets and all the functions related to it. So it's nice if you can just save that tile for later recall. So if I start from scratch, I don't want to reconfigure all those groupings. So I can say, well, let me save that. We did all modes, last 7, 1 hour interval. So I can load this tile now, and it's going to have all that data pre-saved in there. I can change it around a little bit, but I don't have to start from scratch. I don't have to reconfigure all these data sets individually. So it just gives you lots of different tools to say, that's what I care about, and I expect that tile database will grow and grow and grow. We've just scratched the surface for, adding things in there, but I expect there's going to be some interesting, custom reports that people end up creating. So we can say, put a live image in there. We can add lots of different stuff. So you get the idea. So customizable layouts, workspaces, and this is either saved personally or saved publicly. And that's essentially the portal. And I'll load this one back in there. And that's it. Like I said, there's lots more applications associated with that. We have a big list of roadmap items that are coming soon. I'm really excited to kind of launch this to start getting people using it and getting feedback to enhance it even more. So that's it for the web client portion of it. I'll jump back into the presentation and we'll take some questions.
Okay, there is quite a few questions. So we'll just start at the first one and then make our way down.
Yeah, just to that point, we'll spend maybe about 15 minutes answering questions, and then anything we don't get to, we will follow up in writing and answer you. So don't worry if we don't get to you, and we will provide a recording too.
Someone asked, does it count motorcycles and e-bikes?
It does not. It can count motorcycles, but we haven't configured it to separate that from light vehicles. So I don't know how accurately it will. Currently, it's just those 4 modes that I showed there.
Can the detection zone be changed, or is there a specific range it captures?
It can be changed to whatever you want. Essentially, anywhere on the camera image that you can see, we can expand the zone to include. So it's really about the geometry or the location of the poles that we get to mount to and what the field of view the camera has from where you mount it. And so you can see in that image, we're somewhat restricted where we couldn't see as much of the right side. So if we move the camera a little bit, we're actually going out next week to do that so that we can do a little bit more pre-activation. So they're not actually in the crossing, they're maybe 2 feet before the crossing when the flashing starts. So absolutely, as long as you can see it, we can put a zone there. But that's the big limitation, is mounting the camera in a good position and getting a good field of view.
Do you have any findings to compare the different types of PXOs and compliance? For example, type C is better than type D?
No, I can tell you this, we have a small number of demo sites we've deployed, and that's it. So another very interesting area of research I'd love to do. This is literally a brand new product. And so, yeah, we're happy to begin exploring those things. We're gonna have a lot of data coming in, so we don't have that but I think it's a great idea and something to research for sure.
Does it differentiate cyclists with dismounted cyclists crossing?
It does not. To be honest, I haven't seen any dismounted cyclists. If I recall from my past experience using these cameras for counting, it would typically count the pedestrian or both. So it might double count in that case, but I haven't seen that. You know, I know you're supposed to dismount when you go to the crosswalk, but I haven't seen it yet. So I don't have a good answer for that. But I suspect it would be either just ped or it would count it as both.
Are you able to detect the pedestrians prior to entering the roadway in order to activate the flashers?
Yeah, absolutely. We can activate it anywhere, and to that we can also do directional filtering. So we've been looking at that as well for this site, where there's a sidewalk right adjacent to the crossing. There's also the pathway, so we can set up a zone and say only objects passing this direction through the zone will activate, so that you don't have sidewalk traffic activating as well. So absolutely, again, anything you can see, you can put a zone on, and you can apply filters around directionality and object types. If you want only bikes or only peds, etc.
Further to that question, there was a little bit more. He asked for the detection zone, the area in the sidewalk boulevard area before the ped reaches the road, for example, 5 meters back, 10 meters back, and zone across the road. If we were trying to see how many people cross within the proposed existing crosswalk versus the area to the side, especially useful when determining warrants for a new pedestrian crossing without any crosswalk painted.
Interesting use case. We absolutely can. We can put a zone, again, anywhere you can see it. And so we could delineate a counting zone that's on the crossing, and then we could put adjacent ones, you know, up and down the street to compare, the volume of users that cross outside of that designated area. So absolutely possible. We can put a zone anywhere and we can collect data anywhere. There's a limitation with, spatially, there has to be some segmentation. So on that view, if you wanted to do 3 different zones, like at the crossing and then before and after, no problem, guaranteed. But if you start trying to sliver it a little bit more granular than that, you'd probably run into some challenges.
Someone asked, can the system be portable?
Certainly, it's really just the box, one cable, and a camera. So it's not that complicated. It obviously takes some work to strap it to the pole. The biggest thing is the power element. So if you're going with the solar system, then that's probably the most portable approach, that you can just maybe even keep it all together at the top. And just, you have those 2 things to mount with a small cable going to the camera, and it would be probably maybe 40 minutes to an hour worth of work to mount it and dismount it. So not meant to be portable, but certainly not that hard if you wanted to do, a couple weeks or a month study at each site.
Someone asked, how well is the cloud porter in rural areas where cell service isn't optimal?
It depends on what you mean by optimal. As long as we can, to be honest, the data is always stored locally. So even if there's an outage or we can't get to it right away, the data is still collected. And so sometimes we collect them every minute. So we have down to 1 minute interval resolution. So we might end up missing an interval or 2, but then on the second or the third attempt, we will capture what's there and then clear it again. So it's very kind of low bandwidth data we're collecting. It's just bits and bytes for the most part. Probably the biggest challenge we run into in poor cell service areas is just the images. So the images, are higher resolution, larger files. So that functionality might be spotty or not working very well at all. We can lower the resolution, which might resolve it, but that's really the only high data usage aspect of the solution. So the basic data count collection and non-compliance data, I don't see any issue using that in rural areas. So if you have no cell service, then obviously it won't work, but it shouldn't be a problem with poor signal. As long as it's connecting, we should be okay.
Can this be used at PXOs at intersections or roundabouts?
Say it again, sorry, Sam.
Can this be used at pedestrian crossings at intersections or roundabouts?
It sort of could, but really it's been tailored for applications around PXOs. So it can count anywhere. You know, you point the camera at something, you can put a counting zone, and we can ingest that data. But the automatic flash functionality is designed to interface with RFB solutions, so that aspect wouldn't work. And the non-compliance, I guess, technically would work as well, but you then need one for each crossing. So it get kind of expensive, and I think there's alternative solutions that would probably do better at the kind of monitoring you'd want to do with those. So I'd say you get very limited functionality, and so the focus, I'd say, is PXOs.
What is the most common source of power? Is it the same as the RRFBs? And how is the remote monitoring capability achieved? For example, via the client or Stinson cell modem?
Via our own, well, it can be either or. So to be honest, if we use an LTE modem, typically a microhard modem for the AC version and a Sierra wireless modem because it's very low power for the solar version. So we're very open to using client modems. But the key thing is that the data has to get to our cloud. So we can't use a SIM card that is on the client's private network because it won't be able to reach our cloud portal. We could do that through IT, but we can absolutely, if you use a public static IP SIM card, we can use an agency's SIM, no problem. We could use your modem as well if you really wanted to, but we typically bundle everything, including the SIM card with the solution, but we're open to mixing and matching. And as far as the most common power options, due to cost, I expect that AC power is going to be your first go-to, but probably half the RFBs out there are solar only. So I expect that the solar is going to be quite popular as well. One thing I'll mention is that the AC power doesn't have to come from the PXO per se. Often you'll be installing solar RFB systems on a luminaire pole. So as long as you have 24-hour power on that pole, we can supply a light pole tap add-on to the solution. So we pull power from the photocell adapter on the top of the street light or even from the hand pole at the base of the pole to pull power. And we can get creative, and even if you have nighttime power only, we can have like a charge recharge system. We've done that before with TAPCO RFBs, and we could do the same here. But yeah, it's really going to depend. Some cities are very heavy on AC, some are, but in my experience of selling the solutions, it's about half and half, and I expect we'll have something similar here with the solution.
Someone asked if there's any sample reports available.
To be honest, there's no reports at all. It's all customized. So one thing I didn't get to, and maybe I won't get into it now, but all those reports you see, there's an export option. So you can export an image of that tile, so of the bar graph or the line graph or the image itself. You can export it as a PNG, or you can export the data as a CSV, either as individual for each data set or a combined CSV where it's all merged into one and divided by interval. So there's no standard reports. I could pull some samples from some of those dashboards I created and show you what the CSV looks like, but really the sky's the limit, and that's the idea, is that we haven't created standardized anything. It's meant to be kind of customized based on your use cases. And yeah, so I hope that answers your questions. If you want me to send you some screenshots or data exports from some of those tiles or reports that I created, happy to do that. But so far we don't have anything standardized beyond kind of the ones we've just kind of created over the past couple months.
Someone asked, have you set up cameras in a busy intersection for collecting traffic data?
We've not. It's certainly possible. The big downfall is that the system doesn't collect speed data. So we've looked at potentially using the system for like a mid-block multimodal count station, and it certainly can do that, but we're not sure if missing speed data is going to make that an interesting solution. But certainly it's possible, and it's out of the box able to do that right now. So if that's of interest, minus the speed, then absolutely you can do that. And to be honest, Bosch does collect metadata on users, including speed. Their API on the camera just doesn't pass that on currently, but my understanding is in the future it will, in which case, of course, we'll integrate that data as well. So the plan is once speed data is more available in the API, we probably will focus on that segment, but for now, this is the core focus.
Someone asked, does the solar power unit come with solar panels?
Yes, sorry. Should have put a picture of it. I meant to, but yes, absolutely. So full solar system. It's typically we will provide a vertically mounted solar panel, so you don't got to worry about snow collection in the winter. But yeah, we've been custom designing solar systems for ever since we founded 8 years ago. So absolutely full turnkey. The only thing we'll provide is the steel banding typically. So you just strap the solar, strap the box, strap the camera, and then 2 cables for the solar, 1 Cat5 cable for the camera, and you're off to the races.
There's a few questions about cost and cost per configuration.
Yeah, so we haven't contemplated configuration costs. There are hardware costs, and there's an ongoing software fee and cell and that SIM fee, which if we supply it, we'll apply it, or you can supply your own. So happy to follow up with you the questions to kind of give you a detailed breakdown of the costing model.
How can I export this data and in what format?
Yeah, as I mentioned, it's all CSV based. So we'll send out some samples when we send the reporting of the 2 options, which is kind of segmented data sets where they each have their own sheet within Excel, as well as a combined data set. But all of those tiles have the ability to have the data exported.
Can you separate activation from people who push the button against automatic?
No, that's something we're interested in. Right now, we're not monitoring the system as an input to see when it's flashing. So it's something we can support. Both the camera and the modem have digital inputs, which we could utilize to do that. And it's something we've thought of, but currently, no, we can't. But again, an area of research we're very curious about.
Someone asked if you can show the camera accuracy page again.
Oh, for sure.
Just for reference, the slide deck will be sent to everyone who registered for the webinar tomorrow, in case you're interested in taking a second look.
Yeah.
How does the auto flash function connect to an existing flasher? Is it a dry contact parallel to the push button contacts?
That's exactly right. So almost all RFP systems utilize a bulldog style contact closure push button. And so we just go in parallel with that and simulate a button press and essentially hold the button down while people are crossing. So in most systems we've seen so far, like the majors like Capco, JSF, Carmana, we're familiar that if you hold the button down, it will continue to flash. So that's what we're simulating. If there's any companies that require a new press, we can have, kind of a staggered input, like every few seconds, have it turn off and turn back on to keep it flashing. But you got it absolutely right. That's all we're doing is just simulating a button press and holding it down while people cross.
Someone asked, can you customize the time intervals? For example, 15-minute intervals.
Yeah, so we go down to 1 minute is the smallest interval. So we do 1 minute, 5 minutes, and then 15, 1 hour, 1 day, 1 week, 1 month. I think are the intervals we support. And so 1 minute data is what's available the same day. So within 1 minute, you can get data from 1 minute ago. And then every night we run a number of kind of script jobs to kind of aggregate the data across the various intervals. So on the same day, you can only get 1 minute interval. And then anything the day before or before, you can get all those other intervals viewed.
And that's actually the last question, which is perfect because we're a minute over when we said we would finish.
Okay, awesome. Well, that's great. Thank you everyone for attending and all those great questions. I'm really excited to get your feedback and any other ideas you have around this product. We are open for business now. I'm very interested to kind of get these systems rolling. We have a ton of interest, and yeah, please reach out. I don't think I put my email in here, which was a big oversight, but when we send out the follow-up email tomorrow, it'll include my contact details, and yeah, just reach out, any questions you have, and happy to discuss getting the system into your hands. So thank you everyone for taking the time today, and have a great rest of your day.